Have you ever had that feeling? That slow, creeping dread that your life is happening in the passenger seat. You have the map, you know the destination, that book you want to write, the business you dream of building, the skill you ache to master. But someone else or something else is at the wheel, and it's a terrible driver. It swerves at every notification, pulls over for every trivial curiosity, and gets hopelessly lost in a labyrinth of meaningless tasks. You end the day exhausted, having been everywhere and nowhere at all, the most important landmarks on your map, still distant, hazy specks on the horizon. Why is this feeling so universal? Why, in an age of unprecedented access to information and tools for creation, do so many of us feel like we are fundamentally incapable of directing our own minds? We blame our willpower. We blame the algorithm. We blame the relentless pace of modern life. We tell ourselves we just need more discipline, a better app, a stricter schedule. But what if the problem isn't our character or even our tools? What if we've been fundamentally misunderstanding the very nature of attention itself? What if the fight against distraction isn't a fight at all, but a negotiation with a powerful, invisible force we've never been taught to see? This was a question that consumed Daniel Rhodes, not as a philosopher or a scientist, but as a man whose life was unraveling at the seams, stitch by painful stitch, because of it. He didn't just want an answer, he needed one. And his journey to find it reveals a truth about focus that is more profound and more liberating than any productivity hack you've ever heard. To understand the breakthrough that is, focus wins, you have to understand the man Daniel Rhodes was before he wrote it. He wasn't a guru living in a minimalist cabin. He was a star architect at a prestigious firm in Chicago, a man whose entire career was built on the currency of deep, sustained thought. His gift was the ability to hold the blueprint of a skyscraper, with its thousands of interlocking systems, its aesthetic lines, its structural soul, entirely in his mind. He was known for his marathon creative sessions, vanishing into a project for days and emerging with something brilliant. But slowly, almost imperceptibly at first, his superpower began to fail him. The world he operated in was changing. The quiet hum of the drafting room had been replaced by the chaotic symphony of open-plan offices, the incessant ping of emails, the urgent chime of instant messages. His focus, once a concentrated laser, was becoming a flickering strobe light. He found himself starting a complex calculation for a building's load-bearing capacity, only to be pulled away by an email about the catering for a client meeting. He'd be deep in the flow of creative design, and a news alert on his phone would shatter his concentration, leaving the fragile idea to evaporate like mist. He started working longer hours, hoping to find those pockets of quiet concentration late at night or in the early morning, but he was only stretching his frayed attention thinner. He was a man running on a cognitive overdraft, constantly borrowing focus from his future self, accruing a debt of mental exhaustion that was becoming impossible to repay. His colleagues noticed. The easy confidence was replaced by a tense, brittle energy. The visionary designs became more conservative, more derivative. He was no longer leading the pack. He was just trying to keep up. The breaking point wasn't a gradual decline. It was a catastrophic collapse. It came in the form of the Apex Tower, a project that was meant to be the jewel in his firm's crown and the legacy of his career. It was his baby, but this baby was demanding. It required a level of sustained, intricate, multi-layered thinking that his fractured attention could no longer provide. He'd sit at his desk, staring at the schematics, feeling the solution just beyond his mental grasp, but his mind would skitter away. He'd check his email for the 10th time in an hour, just for the tiny, hollow hit of clearing an inbox. He'd get lost in a rabbit hole of research on a minor material specification, a form of productive procrastination that felt like work but accomplished nothing of substance. He missed a critical miscalculation in the HVAC system's integration with the core structure, an error that a younger, more focused version of himself would have caught in an instant. It was a multi-million-dollar mistake, discovered late in the construction planning phase. The fallout was brutal. The client was furious. The firm's reputation was damaged, and Daniel was quietly, devastatingly sidelined. He sat in a glass-walled conference room, listening to his superiors explain the consequences, but all he could hear was a roaring in his ears. It was the sound of his own potential, his own intellect, failing him. He hadn't been outsmarted or outmaneuvered. He had been defeated by 1,000 tiny cuts, by the relentless, invisible enemy of distraction. That night, sitting in his silent apartment, surrounded by the beautiful, complex objects he had once had the focus to design, he realized his problem wasn't professional. It was existential. He had the knowledge, the skill, the ambition, but he had lost the one tool required to wield them. He had lost control of his own mind. His quest began not as a search for a new productivity system, but as a desperate mission to understand the very physics of his own failure. His journey began not in self-help books, but in the annals of neuroscience, physics, and evolutionary biology. He was looking for the source code of distraction, and his first major breakthrough came from an unexpected place, a conversation with an astrophysicist. She was describing the concept of gravity, not as a thing, but as a curvature in space-time caused by mass. Massive objects don't pull smaller objects toward them. They warp the very fabric of the universe, and smaller objects simply follow the path of least resistance along those curves. A light bulb went off in Daniel's mind. This was a perfect metaphor for attention. He started calling it attention gravity. The principle is this: our attention isn't a finite resource we simply spend. It is a dynamic force, constantly being warped and pulled by the mass of the stimuli in our environment. A task or a distraction doesn't just ask for our attention. It exerts a gravitational pull on it. The mass of a stimulus is determined by a combination of factors: its novelty, its emotional resonance, its perceived urgency, and its potential for immediate reward. This is why the pull of a smartphone is so immense. It's not one object. It's a supermassive black hole of potential stimuli. Each notification, each new email, each potential social media interaction is a high-mass object, warping our attention toward it. Daniel realized his old strategy, and the strategy of almost everyone, was to use willpower to fight this gravity, to try and fly his little spaceship of focus in a straight line while surrounded by planets and stars pulling him off course. It was exhausting and, ultimately, futile. You can't defeat gravity with sheer force. You have to understand it and work with it. He found a powerful case study in a group of elite software developers at a Silicon Valley company. The company was struggling with project delays until one manager, an amateur astronomer, had a similar insight. Instead of demanding more focus, she redesigned the team's attentional environment. She instituted Deep Work Wednesdays, a day with 0 meetings. She implemented an email protocol where non-urgent emails were only checked twice a day, effectively reducing the mass of the inbox. She created a physical space, a quiet car area of the office where no conversations were allowed. She wasn't asking them to be more disciplined. She was simply removing the most massive gravitational objects from their immediate orbit. The results were staggering. Productivity tripled, not because the coders were working harder, but because their attention could finally settle into a stable, productive trajectory without being constantly knocked off course by the gravity of endless interruptions. This principle explains so much of Daniel's own failure. His open-plan office wasn't just noisy. It was a dense asteroid field of high-mass distractions, each one exerting its own pull, making a stable orbit of deep focus impossible. But as Daniel began applying the principle of attention gravity to his own life, he hit a wall. He created his own fortress of solitude. He used website blockers, turned off his phone for hours, and structured his day to minimize external pulls. And it helped. The external noise quieted, but an internal noise began to roar. He would be sitting in perfect silence, ready to tackle a complex problem, and his own mind would generate the distractions. He'd start worrying about an unpaid bill. He'd replay an awkward conversation from the day before. He'd suddenly be consumed by a desire to research the history of a completely unrelated topic. He had shielded himself from the external universe, but he discovered there was an equally powerful gravitational force originating from within. The first principle was incomplete. It explained the world of distraction, but not the deep internal why. This sent him on a second quest, this time into the world of psychology, motivation, and goal setting. He found the missing piece of the puzzle while studying the lives of people who accomplished incredible long-term feats: polar explorers, concert violinists, and even the medieval artisans who dedicated their entire lives to building a single cathedral they would never see completed. What did they have that he didn't? The answer wasn't about managing the present. It was about their relationship with the future. This led to his second major principle, the cognitive horizon. This principle states that our ability to sustain focus on a task is directly proportional to how clearly and emotionally we can connect with its future payoff. Our minds have a natural horizon, a point in the future beyond which consequences feel abstract and unreal. For most people, this horizon is incredibly close. The pleasure of watching one more YouTube video is on the immediate horizon. The satisfaction of finishing a project that's 3 months away is over the horizon, lost in the haze. The people who achieve extraordinary things, Daniel discovered, aren't necessarily better at fighting temptation. They have trained themselves to pull their cognitive horizon closer. A marathon runner doesn't just think about the finish line 26 miles away. In mile 2, they're already feeling the sensation of crossing it, the weight of the medal, the cheers of the crowd. They make the future reward so viscerally present that it becomes more compelling than the immediate pain in their lungs. Daniel found a story of a young medical student who was struggling with the sheer volume of memorization. She was constantly distracted, procrastinating by cleaning her apartment or calling friends. Her cognitive horizon was the upcoming test, a source of stress and fear. Her advisor gave her a strange piece of advice. Spend one afternoon a week volunteering in the hospital's pediatric ward. By interacting with the sick children, she would one day be able to help. She wasn't just studying for a test anymore. She was forging a powerful emotional link to her ultimate why. She was pulling the distant horizon of being a doctor right into her present reality. The abstract task of memorizing anatomical terms was now imbued with the concrete, emotional purpose of healing a child. Her focus problems vanished, not because she got more disciplined, but because the why became more powerful than any what else. Daniel Rhodes now held two powerful, but seemingly separate pieces of the puzzle. He understood the external world of attention gravity, the relentless pull of distractions that warped the space around him. And he understood the internal world of the cognitive horizon, the critical link between present action and future reward. He could manage the first, and he could work to cultivate the second. But he felt there was still a missing link, a unifying theory that would explain how these two forces interacted. The aha moment, the grand synthesis, didn't come in a library or an interview. It came on a cold, clear night, as he stood by the shore of Lake Michigan, looking out at the city skyline he had helped to build. He was watching the beam of a lighthouse far down the coast, cutting through the darkness. The beam wasn't fighting the darkness. It wasn't trying to illuminate the entire lake. It was fixed to a single, immovable point on the shore, and by its nature, it created a safe, clear path for ships, regardless of the chaos of the waves or the distraction of the city lights. And that was it. The solution wasn't to manage gravity, and it wasn't just to see the horizon. It was to build a lighthouse. He called it intentional anchoring. This is a core insight of Focus Wins. The ultimate key to mastering your attention is to create a single dominant why that is so massive, so personally meaningful, and so deeply integrated into your identity that it becomes the central sun of your attentional solar system. This anchor is more than just a goal. It's a declaration of purpose. When you have a sufficiently powerful anchor, it does two things simultaneously and automatically. First, it exerts its own immense gravitational pull, effortlessly organizing your priorities and actions around it. The million-dollar project, the novel, the PhD. When it's truly your anchor, its gravity naturally pulls your focus toward the tasks that serve it. Second, and more profoundly, it actively pulls your cognitive horizon toward you. The anchor isn't an abstract destination in the future. It becomes a part of your present identity. You are not trying to write a book. You are a writer. The anchor transforms a distant reward into a present-day reality, making the immediate gratification of distractions feel trivial and cheap by comparison. Suddenly, the two principles snapped into one. You don't combat attention gravity by building walls. You overcome it by generating a stronger, more meaningful gravity of your own. You don't strain to see your cognitive horizon. Your anchor becomes a lighthouse that illuminates it, making the path forward clear and compelling, even in a storm. Distraction, he finally understood, is not a sign of a weak will. It is a symptom of a weak anchor. It is the natural state of a mind that has not been given a sufficiently compelling reason to stay put. Daniel Rhodes' journey didn't just give him a theory. It gave him his life back. He returned to the world of architecture. But as a different man, he founded his own small, specialized firm, anchored in the principle of creating sustainable, human-centric spaces. This anchor, this deep, unwavering why, dictated everything. It made it easy to say no to lucrative but soulless projects. It made the hard, focused work of innovative design feel not like a chore, but like an act of purpose. His mind, once a chaotic sea, was now a calm, deep ocean, organized around a single, immovable point. This is the power he offers to us. The journey from a state of constant, reactive distraction to one of profound, proactive focus is not about finding the right app or the perfect schedule. It's about undertaking the deep, internal work of building your anchor. So what does that look like for you? It begins with asking the hard question. What is the single most important, meaningful contribution you want to make? Define it. Write it down. Make it so clear and compelling that it gives you chills. This is your anchor. Next, for every major task you undertake, consciously map the connection back to that anchor. Don't just work on the report. See it as a step that solidifies the expertise that allows you to achieve your anchor's purpose. Finally, once your anchor is in place, you can begin to consciously design your environment. Don't just block distractions. Ask whether each thing in your orbit serves your anchor. If it doesn't, it's dead weight. Let it go. This is more than a strategy. It's a new way of living. It's the difference between being a ship tossed on the waves of circumstance and being the lighthouse that commands them. Understanding this is the first, crucial step. But the real transformation happens when you decide to act, when you decide to start the work of building your own anchor today. If you're ready to begin that journey, to join a community of people committed not just to chasing productivity, but to building a life of intention, then subscribe. It's not just a click, it's a declaration. It's your first step toward reclaiming your own mind. Stop fighting the tide of distraction. Instead, build your anchor and command the currents of your own attention.